Hello and welcome back to Top TV. My name is Jordan, and today we start our first show after Severance. It's been a while. Kind of life got very busy for me, but I've been wanting to watch Pluribus on Apple TV. I know they're like 4 episodes in right now, but I just started it last night. I just got a great deal on Apple TV and decided, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So we will be, I know they released the first 2 episodes on the first day on November 7th, but we are going to be doing episode by episode. So far at this point, I've only been watching up to episode 1. That is all I've seen so far of Pluribus. So we will be diving into that. So, um, yeah, I mean, wow, what an hour of television, and what a way to start the show as we break down season 1, episode 1 of Vince Gilligan's new television hit, Pluribus. Episode 1, We Is Us, written and directed by Vince Gilligan, and it premiered November 7th, 2025 on Apple TV. They got rid of the plus. It's just Apple TV now. So just stay tuned for more Pluribus discussions coming your way here on Top TV. I'll be kind of going at my own pace. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch up at some point here. But if not, here it is. I watched the first one last night, wrote my notes on it last night, and have recording today. Hopefully get this up. Late Monday, early Tuesday, as we get ready for Thanksgiving. Hopefully, I'm able to watch episode 2 sometime soon and be able to record a reaction to that. So this is a show that's been on my list since the announcement that Vince Gilligan was making a new show. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are two of my favorite shows, two of the greatest shows of all time. And when it was announced he was making a show, I believe there's actually a subreddit I joined of it when it was called Wycaro, or at least that was the working name, I guess. We hear it come up in this episode here. But, been kind of eagerly anticipating it. I will say, I mostly stayed away from any sort of news or trailers on this. All I knew is Rhea Seehorn was back in it. And I think I saw a short little trailer that was like 15 to 30 seconds long. It didn't really show me anything. I don't really know what it even showed at this point. So I had no idea about the plot except for like the main character being the last miserable person on Earth. Had no clue how he got to that point. I think I saw like how they were doing like the petri dish type thing, and I was like, is this going to be virus related? I was very confused on how we were getting to that point. So I had no clue going on, as blind as you could probably go into this. And boy, does Gilligan know how to make a pilot. I was like instantly hooked before we're even introduced to Rhea Seehorn's character, Carol. So I guess let's dive into the episode itself here. So we open. Actually, here, let me read the description. Sorry, I usually like to do this, which I didn't have here. But it's an astronomer's discovery turns the planet upside down. Carol Sturka, a curmudgeonly novelist, is terrified by the strange new world. Like I said, I know they released 2 on the first day. I wanted to make sure I took the time to really take in this pilot and formulate my thoughts on it. So some of the questions I ask might be addressed later on in these first few episodes, or they could be open questions. So I guess bear with me if you've seen the first 2 while you're listening to this. But we open to it like these astronauts, or not, I guess not astronauts, astronomers, it says here, getting a message from space that they are trying to decode. It's like the talk of the town. By town, I mean like all of the business of the astronomers are coming in. A lot of people in that one little tiny trailer, which I thought was funny. We also had a countdown. It started with like 400 some days, right? Counting down. And you're wondering what that's counting down to, right? We are instantly kind of set up this premise of seeing that clock and be like, oh, we're counting down to something. We don't know what. And I thought that was a very interesting use of the timer, to kind of set this in the back of our minds that something is going to be happening in like 439 days or whatever it was. Now, obviously, you're thinking it's not going to take that long. Like, that's not going to be the equivalent of like 5 seasons counting down. But you are wondering at this point, like, what are we counting down to? And these astronomers get this message that's coming from like 600 light years away. And they think maybe at one point it's Morse code. And they turn out it's like, as we hear from at the end, that it is like a sequence of DNA almost. And then we cut to like genetic testing site where we have these scientists testing the virus on rats, and there is a dead rat that is being looked at as he awakens and bites the scientist. And this makes the scientist, as she's washing her hands, like really seize up and start like having a seizure. And the other guy who's been on like commercials, right? I think he's pretty well known. I don't have his name off the top of my head here, but see him in a lot of stuff. He is like freaked out. He's acting quickly to try to save her. They're getting into like, the next room where they are usually getting a shower before they're going into the next place. And we kind of cut after she stops seizing and she's smiling. So what I take of that is, as we're going to cut here to the security guard that we met earlier, trying to get this like stuck bag of Fritos from the vending machine, the guy scientist who we last saw was not infected, comes over, kisses him, and like causes him to seize. The woman scientist goes and starts licking all the donuts, and there's a sign that says "Help yourself." So obviously that's going to spread. But so the way I take it here, right, is that once she stops seizing and smiling, the other guy, the scientist, takes off her stuff to make sure she's all right, takes off his stuff, and, gets it spread to him. During this, I think we're actually introduced to the main character of the show, Carol, in between the astronomers and the scientists. But she is an author, Carol, and she is on a book tour promoting like her new romance fantasy book. She reads a chapter, does like a Q&A, a signing, and we think she's in good spirits, right? All these fans that are fawning over this character she made, they are, asking her tons of questions. There's this one fan that is, I thought, very funny with how fans can be, I guess, in where she's like, if this character doesn't go back, I'm done. And Carol has to lean in and be like page 219 or whatever. And, that's when the character comes back. But Carol seems to be doing okay with this. But we later learn that is a little bit of a front, right? When they get into like the Uber, we find out she hates it, right? Her girlfriend, I'm not super clear on what that relationship is. Wife, maybe, is at this point we just think like manager client relationship. And they're getting in the Uber. The Uber driver is like, should I know you? And she's like, if you like pointless drivel or something, mindless drivel. So she thinks her books that she is writing is not great. This is kind of I would say, common phenomenon, not always exclusive to writers. So what I mean by that is, I don't talk about it a lot. I'm an aspiring writer. I like writing in my spare time. I would love to be published someday. Probably not ever going to happen. Whatever. But with that, there are people that have hit the big time and almost resent the thing that got them there, right? So we'll learn that Carol is writing what she considers a more serious book later on. But for now, she is just pumping out these romance fantasy books that she does not really care about. And this is the Waikaro series. This is what that fantasy book a series is called. And we see that a lot with, I would say, actors as well, So my question right now, and this may never get addressed, right? Did Carol always think that way about these books, or did they start in a place where she really did enjoy it, but because it is the only thing she's kind of getting tied to and the only thing people ask her about, that it makes her kind of resent them, right? Like I said, we've seen this with actors where they become tied to a certain role, whether it be a movie, whether it be a TV show, where they are always quoted lines. You kind of see it with Rainn Wilson with Dwight. He's kind of come around a bit to it. Josh Radnor with Ted Mosby. There are people who get tired of either being quoted the lines or only being associating with that thing. So they try to branch out into different roles. They try to, in this case, Carol writing her more serious book. And it ends up, becoming a thing where sometimes they come around to it. I'll say with the state of the world at the end of this episode, I doubt Carol's coming around to her books at all. But what I'm just saying is it is funny to see that. And even though she doesn't like her books, supposedly, when she's going back to the airport, when they get into New Mexico, she is walking in with Helen, and there's this bit where she notices at a store in the mall in the airport that the top shelf on the display case has the Outlander books instead of the Waikaro books, and she kind of like stops, signals to Helen, who goes over there and replaces the Outlander books onto the bottom shelf and the Waikaro book, her new release, onto the top shelf. So I think it's funny that even though she thinks her books are pointless drivel, mindless drivel, she is still upset that it's not the top on the top shelf. Now, some of that stuff is it could be negotiation. Where things are placed in a supermarket, where things are placed on a bookshelf, all that kind of stuff is usually negotiated by the companies and stuff. So maybe that's what's going on here. But I think it's just kind of more of like showing how Carol's a little, I'd say a little vain, maybe, or something like that. But they get into their car, and their car has a breathalyzer. So it's kind of set up that as Carol is trying to go to the front seat, Helen says, "Wait, no." And she's like, "What? I only had like a little bit of alcohol or whatever, and it was hours ago." And Helen's like, "No." And then Helen gets in, uses the breathalyzer. It's clean, and they go out to a bar. The two of them leave their drinks and go out for a smoke. Helen is reading like social media reactions and suggests that they do like an impromptu Q&A. When they are discussing if the main character of the book is based off a real guy, this truck crashes into the car. So Carol runs over to see if he's okay, and when she looks back at Helen, she is still typing on the phone, or so it looks, right? But later we'll see her drop the phone and fall back onto the cement because she's seizing up at the same time, too. So Carol then runs over to her instead and will use the chalkboard sign as a like gurney to get her into the guy's truck. So she couldn't get into the SUV because of the breathalyzer, because she was drinking. And this is where the show gets like absolutely crazy, and it's almost like a silent film with no dialogue, as Rhea Seehorn's character, as Rhea Seehorn delivers a masterclass trying to get Helen to the hospital. Like, this is a really, like, if there's a scene you're probably going to show somebody to try to hook them, it is probably this scene of her in the car. Because you have her driving through the town. We get to see like stuff on fire. We see a police car, a couple police cars with their sirens on, crashed and like flipped over. Um, and we just get to see how fast everything is kind of falling to shit here in Albuquerque. The camera work is also just phenomenal in this bit. So bravo Vince, as people would say. And it's sort of crescendoed at this part where I think one of the best shots is, the camera is situated like if you're watching me on the YouTube like this. But what you do is you get the truck coming and it just drives up right into that tight close up of Rhea Seehorn, and just an absolute awesome shot. I will say the hospital scene here is quite chilling, especially when you see the new mother with the car seat. And you're just thinking, like, what's going on with the baby? I am a father now, so that is something that, tugs at the heartstrings. But the scene also made me absolutely crack up laughing when she does get the gurney and she just smashes it into a guy standing there, who's like pushing a wheelchair. But it felt very video gamey, like where you accidentally hit an NPC and they just like go ragdoll physics. Like if it was like that, and then it sends the man in the wheelchair rolling across the room. Like it was just really well set up. Breaking Bad was funny at times. Better Call Saul was funny at times. I do think this is probably an intentional funny moment. I really cracked up at it. I thought it was great. So while she's trying to get Helen into the hospital, into the new gurney, she stops seizing and smiles, but then ends up passing away anyway. I assume due to the fall onto the cement with her head. And now we get like the first conversation with this virus, if you want to call it that, to Carol when they tell her like there's nothing to be worried about, she's safe. She bolts out of there as soon as this doctor that she tried to wake up earlier ends up trying to kiss her to spread the virus. And I was wondering at this point, is the story that she is immune to it, or is the story that she is just not been infected yet, right? So from what we've saw, and I didn't actually cover this, I guess, but when you have the scientists, they are there, and it's like they have to spread it like kissing, right? And then they start doing the thing with the petri dishes. They swab a cheek, put it in there, and then I guess are sending that throughout the world to get contaminated in something. And everybody is fine at the bar. But then I assume all it does take is like, like one person that is infected come in, start the domino effect. And that probably starts happening when she's outside with Helen. And then when she goes to help the person who crashed, I'm assuming then somebody came over to Helen and infected her. But it could be, I guess it could be different than that. That's kind of the vibe I was getting. So at this point, I'm like, is she just not ever going to get like kissed, and that is going to leave her alone? But then she does get kissed, and she still doesn't turn. So it does seem like, especially in the conversation at the end on the TV, that maybe this is like an immunity that she has, and they say that they're trying to fix it. But so she bolts out of there. She drives home and realizes she doesn't have her keys. And the virus, through these like two kids, tell her about the time she locked herself out of the house in like 2016. And she bought a spare key and put it in the planner. And, she tells everybody to leave her alone, and they do. She goes inside and turns on the TV. There's like nothing on until she sees, I think what she assumes is the president, but we learn it's like a USDA or FDA, I think, person that the virus just says this guy was intact and in a suit, so we put him on the screen. And he's just kind of sitting there not talking at all, but there's a number that pops up for her to call. And she calls it, and then the guy is there to answer. But before she calls, she takes a couple drinks. The man apologizes for her loss to Helen, explains what has happened. Um, I love this bit where he's like, if you have any questions, and she's like, yeah, what the fuck? But he explains they're sort of like a virus, but only 11 others are like her, so 12 total. And they will hopefully find a way to fix it so she can join them. And she hangs up, turns off the TV, and is, they've been saying like that your life is yours, but then there's also this sentiment of we want you to join us. And there's a little bit of conversation where she's like, well, who am I talking to? And, he's saying like, we this, we that. But like the guy doesn't exist anymore, right? They're all like one neural network of the same being. They ruled out aliens, right? But the aliens are the ones that sent the message, right? We would think. So I don't know. That's kind of the end of the episode, and I'm sure there's a reason why they probably released two up front is because this episode was really well set up, and I think it's a really great pilot because it's intriguing. But due to the nature of the back half of the episode being almost silent as she's going place to place trying to save Helen, it I could see some people being like, oh, I just gotta watch the next one to see what's going on. And to be fair, that's kind of how I felt. But since I decided I was doing this for the podcast, I was like, I am going to write my notes and kind of sit in a bit and figure out what I want to say and what I want to do about this. So I do have some worries. The worries I have going into this is how can this show, from what we've seen so far, because they do have like a little trailer at the end, I think. But from what we've seen so far, how can this show go far, right? Without getting too redundant. So, as we know, 11 others and Carol are the ones that are so far immune across the world. At first, she's like in Albuquerque, and they're like across the world. That's how fast everything fell. And then we end with the timer going up now, which I thought was cool. But what is the end goal of this? So some of the I think description say that she's trying to save the world after this. Curious to see how she would plan on doing so. She's a writer, she doesn't know a lot of science stuff, so I do wonder if it's like trying to get these 12 people together to figure this out. Are we going to be introduced to those 12 people really early, or is that like end game type of stuff? It seems like you're going to see a lot of different actors, but they are a lot of them still portraying this, what you would say probably pluribus, right? So pluribus means of many. And you have the one is how it is stylized with the I, which you can take to mean that either she is the one that is not affected, or I guess you could say pluribus of many. It is like they're one being. How they keep saying we, right? So that's kind of what I take of it. But so I guess first questions are how long can this go on? So we do know that there's a season 1 and season 2 is ordered around the same time. So I'm assuming they're plugging away at writing, and hopefully in the next year or two we get season 2. But what is the goal after that? Is it a 2-season order and they're just like, hey, let's tell our 2-season story? Probably not. I do assume he's probably thinking like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. You got probably 5-6 seasons of this. The question, when you have so limited people that are not affected, 11, it's enough to make it seem like maybe we can spread that out a bit. It's not enough to be like there's too many people available that like each week you're running into another immunity. So just kind of thinking how this show is going to play out, because I think we'll circle back around a little bit to the book she was talking about with Helen, her serious work. There's not a lot to be going on right now when it comes to work, money. I mean, she could probably sit there and write whatever she wants. Will she be in the space to write that? I don't know. But maybe with Helen's death, it gives her the push to do that. Um, or she just gets totally occupied by doing this plot line of trying to save the world. I do wonder what that would mean from, because I was watching a little thing with Vince Gilligan that said like what is Pluribus, right? And it was like a little like 2-minute thing that's like, hey, what is this show? How do what is this about? And one thing we didn't really talk about with this virus here, or whatever you want to call it, this hive mind, is that everybody is happy, right? And they seem to be happy. But the question is, are they actually happy? Is this real? Is this a real thing? Real people, like Carol said, like that person is not existing anymore pretty much because they have taken over their body, right? It's almost like a zombie type thing. If zombies were happy and not, like Walking Dead zombies. So it makes me wonder where, like, I think there's two outcomes. You do end up saving the world, or you have Carol succumb to, because she is a miserable person, realizing, like, kind of almost like when this does happen, that she accepts it and becomes happy and joins the us, joins the pluribus, right? Like, I feel like that could be an ending to the show as well. Um, but I'm curious, like, how much of this, they love filming in Albuquerque and New Mexico, so I assume most of the show is going to take place there without going super far reaching. Even, maybe these 11 people are going to meet up in Albuquerque, or send correspondence. Right now, there's no internet, there's no TV, there's no anything. Maybe they'll get that stuff back online. Maybe they can. Um, since they are this full neural network that can potentially get that back up and running, I guess. Otherwise, this is, we're entering post-apocalyptic type territory for the show, which some of the descriptions, I think Wikipedia calls it a post-apocalyptic, so it could be that too. But overall, the performances were phenomenal in this. Rhea Seehorn, I mean, she was the standout in Better Call Saul, and she just continues to stand out. And I'm so happy she gets her own like vehicle, her own show to kind of show that off, because she does this role very, very well. Um, the, she shows a full range of emotions in this episode: happiness, sadness. Like when the pluribus tries to call her back, and we hear the voicemail, and it's Helen, right, on the voicemail machine, and she just has this great facial expression of already missing her, right? And the sadness of knowing that she's gone, and just being able to hear that voice again through the voicemail, which might be the only way she can ever hear her again, right? Um, Seems like cell phones are not working, anything like that. So if there's a voicemail on a cell phone, probably not being able to play it. But I'm really curious to see what happens next and where we go with episode 2, which I guess I can take a look at real quick and see what it's titled and a little bit of a description, and I'll do some theories on it here. So we get Pirate Lady. A curious familiar face introduces Carol to the bizarre new normal. A gathering in Europe brings strangers together and causes friction. Okay, so that's some of my questions answered there. It seems like we will be having a gathering of the 12 people who are immune in Europe, and some of them may be with it saying causes friction, maybe some of them disagreeing with certain ways to go about this. Now, a curiously familiar face introduces Carol to the bizarre new normal. I wonder if that's somebody that she has worked with in the past that is now part of this, you know, hive mind that is uh, kind of walking her through how life is. We hear them say, like, hey, if you need anything, food, water, stuff like that, let us know. We'll, call us on the landline, and we'll be able to bring it over or whatever. Because we see them even picking up the dead, and they ask her, hey, do you want us to take care of Helen's remains? No. No, she says no. Um, but so it sounds like they're cleaning stuff up, which means that maybe they will kind of push. If there's a gathering in Europe, maybe there will be still things like a way to get there, right? How do you get there when there's only 11 people like that? 12 people like that? Is there one of them that's a pilot, or do they kind of get everything back up and running through this hive mind, and they're like, yeah, we'll let you go to Europe. Like, who cares, right? It, it'd kind of be interesting. Again, it seems almost video game-ish with like this hive mind of characters being like just NPCs that you can just go up to and talk to, but there's not much behind there other than their coding, right? They're not real people you're talking to as an NPC. And in this, it's like that person you're trying to talk to is not really there. They're smiling, they're happy, but they're all part of that hive mind, and they're not like an individual. So I find that very, very fascinating. Pirate Lady makes me think that maybe almost like a pirate ship. So it's kind of the first vibe I got to. So maybe they get to Europe another way, like via boat, or maybe they do pirate a ship or something, like a plane. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating there, but I know there's a lot of people that are probably listening to this that have already watched that episode, so I could be totally off. But I'm very excited to see them go to Europe then, and if we're going to get introduced to these 11 others fairly early on here, really excited for that, and to see who's like playing them, and what would cause the friction. Is that they're, you know, maybe where they're, should we stick together? Should we continue to go back to our home? Should we work on this? Should we work on that? Should we succumb to it? Look how happy they look. Maybe I want to be a part of it. That could be part of the friction too between these 12 people. All right, I guess there's not too much more for me to talk about in this first episode because it's so action packed at that back half. I was pleasantly surprised we got a lot of the answers on what this is in that first episode. Some of the questions I was already kind of thinking of, like, oh, I can talk about that, I'll talk about that, get answered in this first episode already. So it kind of leaves me in this show is wide open right now after the first episode to go any direction at once, which I think is really, really awesome. And I have the utmost faith, obviously, in Vince Gilligan and whoever he has working with him on this, because, like I said, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad are two of my favorite shows of all time. They are fantastic shows. So let's go. And this is a little bit more sci-fi. I love sci-fi stuff. So Vince Gilligan kind of going back to his roots after doing, he wrote on the X-Files before doing Breaking Bad. Yeah. Well, anyway, if you want to contact us, our link tree is in the notes below at Top TV Pod on our social media. You can follow us there. I'm going to try to watch the second episode sometime soon and get that episode up pretty quickly. But thank you all for watching or listening along, and we'll catch you next time when we talk Pluribus episode 2, Pirate Lady.